So as we heard about in the last video, one of the ways you can be an ethical web scraper is to provide a user agent string. Now, a user agent string is an HTTP header. An HTTP header is a parameter you can send along attached to a GET request. And it contains metadata to give the server information about what you're trying to do and who you are. Okay? So a user agent header specifically contains contact and identification information about the person making the request. So if there's any problems, please contact me. Here's my email address. That's what you're trying to say with this user agent. Now, if you're not comfortable doing that, if you're not comfortable giving the website you're trying to scrape your email address, and I would reconsider whether you really want to be scraping, okay? Requests are also much more likely to get blocked by a website if the request does not specify a header with the user agent string, okay? So if you do encounter an issue with web scraping that you just can't download the data, see if adding a user agent, if you haven't yet done so, would help, okay? Now, here's one example of a user agent. So I've created this variable in Python called headers, and it's a Python dictionary. So you could tell by the curly braces here and here that this is JSON format, which in Python is the same thing as a dictionary. I have one key in this dictionary, and that is called user-agent, and then a string that contains all this information. So first, I like to name the app that I'm working on. So in this case, it's just a class example. But if this were an app I was developing called, I don't know, ScraperBot, then I would write ScraperBot 1.2, something like that, right? But here, class example. And hopefully, Spinatron.com, if they have any questions about this, they'll see, oh, this is just a class example. That's fine. We won't hassle them. They're not malicious actors. I also give my email address. And then I write the programming language that I'm working on, and I write the platform that I'm working on. Okay, so all of this information is good for the server to be able to have. Once I've created the dictionary with my headers, with my user agent string, then I could pass it to request.get the way we did last week. So you specify a URL. This is the URL of the website you're trying to scrape, and then headers equal headers. And that's how you give the headers to the server at spinatron.com. Okay. So now that we have downloaded the HTML using request.get, we are ready to start working with that HTML. So to work with the HTML code, we're going to use a function called Beautiful Soup in a Python library called BS4. It is an awesome tool. It's one of the two most popular tools for web scraping in Python, along with a library called Selenium. Beautiful Soup, it is more lightweight, but it's much, much faster in general than Selenium. And so we are going to be talking about Beautiful Soup. Now, Selenium is useful for some very heavy-duty kind of web scraping. And so if you have a complicated situation, look into Selenium. But we're going to proceed with Beautiful Soup. Okay. When we've downloaded the HTML with request.get, it's going to contain a whole bunch of raw HTML strings that look like this, right? So this is just very generic HTML. Tag attribute equals value, and then a navigable string, and then closing the tag. Okay, let's go over each part of this tag just to make sure that we have the terminology down. So a tag, it specifies how the data contained within the page should be organized and how visual elements on this page should look. Tags are very general tools, so they can give hyperlinks, they can put images, they can define a list, they can define a table. There are all sorts of different tags, okay? In the Jupyter Notebook, there's a discussion of what different kinds of tags can do, and there's a link to a longer list. Now, a tag is always contained in these angle braces, the less than and greater than sign. If a tag operates on some text that follows, such as the case here with navigable string, then there should be a closing tag, which is at / and then the same name of the tag. All right, so then that's the opening and closing for that tag. Inside, that text inside is called a navigable string. And then the last part is within the opening tag, you can have an attribute that is equal to a value. Okay? And so we have tags, we've got attributes, and we've got navigable strings. Now, the data we might need can live inside a navigable string, and the data we need might live inside an attribute. There are methods for extracting navigable strings and methods for extracting attributes based on searching for tags, and that's what we're going to talk about next. So, the first step in any kind of web scraping is to download the HTML using requests. After using requests, you have HTML, but it's considered at that point by Python just a big block of text, right? Just one long string. And it's not understood by Python yet to be HTML. So the next step is to parse the code. Parsing the code means registering that text as a specific coding language. And so we're going to parse that with Beautiful Soup, right? So first we're going to import the Beautiful Soup function from the BS4 library, import Beautiful Soup. And then I'm going to create an object for the parsed HTML. Beautiful Soup takes two arguments. First, the text attribute from your requests get request. Get request. And then HTML. That tells Beautiful Soup this is HTML code and not something else, like XML. Okay, these two lines of code will register in Python that the HTML I've just downloaded is HTML. That's going to now allow us to navigate the organizational structure of the HTML code and to extract data from it. And so that brings us to the question of how do we know what to search for? How do we know where our data live? So there are a few different strategies. I'll tell you what I do. I prefer to open up the page I'm trying to scrape in a web browser, in Google Chrome or Firefox or whatever. Then I'm going to right-click on the page and choose View Page Source. No matter how on your browser you get to the page source, it's always called the page source. Then all the HTML is going to appear in the browser instead of whatever visual elements. And then I just search through that HTML with Control F to find examples of the data points I want. Once I find examples, then I can see the kinds of tags that these data points live in. Once I understand the kinds of tags, I can search for those tags and extract the data. Okay? All right, so some specific abilities that you have with Beautiful Soup. One, once you've saved the parsed HTML code, in this case as WNRN, then you can use an attribute called tag, an attribute where you name the tag in order to extract the first tag that appears. So if I do WNRN.meta, it's going to go through that HTML code and give me the first occurrence of the meta tag that appears. Once I have that, and I could save that tag as a separate variable in Python. Once I have that variable, then I can call attributes as if they were elements of a list. So here I've got character set. And so if I say meta tag character set, it tells me the value of it. All right. So this is a good way to extract data from a particular attribute. Here's another example of that. There is a tag called title, and I extract that tag called title, and this is it. This is the first title tag that appears in the WNRN HTML. If I then save that as a variable called title tag, then I've got an attribute here called .string that extracts the text that appears in the middle. So title tag.string will give me WNRN Independent Music Radio. By the way, that's 91.9 in Charlottesville. and also WNRN.org, and you should listen to it. It's a really, really, really good radio station. Anyway, once I have the HTML, then I can also use the find next method, and that's going to find the next occurrence of the same tag. So here, this code right here will find the very first tag in the HTML that is named span, and then if I take that, save it as span tag, and then apply the find next, then it takes me to the next occurrence. So this is the first occurrence of span. This is the second occurrence of span. So in this case, this tells me the artist of the song that was played, and then this is the album that that song is from. Okay? Find.all is another method, and that will find all occurrences of a tag. Now, this is the most useful method that I've found with Beautiful Soup. So if I understand that the data I need all lives in this tag called span, then I could do find all span, and it gives me all of this information. And I can parse this information more in order to extract it and build my clean data frame. A couple more things. If there is an attribute called class, then you can specify the value of class in order to narrow down your find all search return. So in this case, there was class artist and class song. There are a few other classes. If I wanted to get a list of just the artists on the playlist, then I could do span and artist in find all, and then it shows me just the artists. Okay? And then to find all tags with a specific attribute, like let's say that I'm trying to find all of the A tags for which there exists a title attribute, then I could just write title equal true, and it narrows down my search results to just the A tags where title equals true.